Since the summer of 2004, men's tennis has crowned 88 Grand Slam champions. 87 of them came from one continent. That's not a typo, 87 out of 88. And that one exception, Juan Martín del Potro at the US Open in 2009, which was almost 17 years ago. And here's the thing, it's not slowing down, but it's accelerating at a faster rate than ever. Just look at this year. In Melbourne, a Spaniard beat a Serb, Paris, a German beat an Italian, and 2 weeks ago at Wimbledon, which I was actually sat there watching this live, an Italian beat a German. 3 Grand Slam finals in 2026, 6 finalists, 6 Europeans. 25 years ago, this sport belonged to a whole planet. Americans, Australians, Brazilians, Argentinians. But today, it belongs to one continent and one continent only. And almost nobody stops to ask why. I'm Ashwin, and on this channel, I dig into stories underneath tennis. The money, the systems, the stuff the highlights skip. So today, we're breaking down exactly how this happened. The machine Europe had quietly spent 50 years building, why the countries that used to run this sport fell entirely off a cliff, and whether anyone on earth can actually stop it. And I'll tell you now, the answer isn't simply the big 3. So let's get straight into it. To understand how weird the present is at this moment, let's go all the way to the past. Picture the 1990s, Pete Sampras and Andre Agassi trading majors for America, Jim Courier winning in Melbourne and in Paris, and then Pete Rafter flying in at the net in Australia. Europe was in the conversation, don't get me wrong. We had Becker, Edberg, Breger, but it was just one part of the entire tennis ecosystem in the 1990s. And this wasn't even close. 1999 alone, American men won 3 of the 4 majors. 3 out of 4, simply to one country. And does that sound familiar? Because to me, it most definitely does. It's the exact kind of stronghold Europe has right now at this moment. Except back then, everyone assumed it was normal. So when a 21-year-old Andy Roddick blasted an ace on championship point to win that 2003 US Open, nobody blinked, nobody questioned it, and nobody even looked the other way. Because of course, another American had won, just like they've been doing for the past 20 years. That's what the entire production line did. And so another American was waiting, that ace, that single serve, and it turned out to be the last shot an American ever hit to seal a Grand Slam. Because within that same year, the doors shut, and it never happened again. So what happened, or more importantly, why did it happen? Why did America stop winning Grand Slams after Andy Roddick? Now, I know what you're thinking, because for years, this is what I thought as well. Ashwin, it's Federer, Nadal, Djokovic. And look, that's fair enough. 66 Grand Slam titles between the big 3, who in my opinion are 3 of the greatest athletes any sport has ever produced. And they were all peaking on the same continent at the same exact time period. And that really just changes every single statistic. And if the reason Europe has dominated the statistics, that's a good reason. Because it's kind of clear that the big 3 were the reason. And that's also the point at which most videos on this topic stop entirely. But I'm not stopping there. I'm going to go much deeper into this rabbit hole, because Federer's now retired, Nadal's retired, Djokovic is 39, and if the big 3 were the whole story, then the moment they faded, the map should have opened back up for the entire world to dominate tennis again. Slams should have scattered to Brazil, America, Australia, back to what they were 20 years ago. But instead, let's see what 2026 is like. Melbourne in February, Carlos Alcaraz of Spain beats Djokovic in 4 sets and becomes the youngest man in history to complete the career Grand Slam. He's only 22 years old, by the way. Then in Paris, June, the top seed goes out in the second round, and it doesn't even matter, because Alexander Zverev beats Italy's Flavio Cobolli to become the first German man to win Roland Garros in the Open era. Then London, just 2 weeks ago, Jannik Sinner beats Zverev to go back-to-back as a Wimbledon winner, his 5th major, and he's only 24 years old. And so while the big 3 did walk off the stage, leaving tennis itself for the entire world, Europe just reloaded somehow again and fired out Sinner, Alcaraz, Zverev, Medvedev, Rune, Musetti. And this actually tells me something huge. The big 3 were never the cause of Europe's dominance. Is products of what? What machine or what system had they been a part of? Now, this is how I've put Europe's machine, not as one standalone thing, but more as a machine of 4 different parts. And the first part was built, I'm not joking, by a dictator. In the 1960s, Manolo Santana started winning majors, the US Open, Wimbledon, and then General Franco, who was desperate for any international respectability he could get, fell in love with what the fame did for Spain's image. So in the 1970s, Spain went on a building spree. Over 1,000 tennis clubs, and nearly all of them were clay courts. Nobody knew at the time, but Spain had just started a 50-year experiment. Clay changes what a tennis player is. The surface slows the ball down, points will get longer, and you physically cannot blast your way out of trouble. Take Nadal, he puts so much spin on the ball that nearly every other player he played against in his era lost against him in Roland Garros. No one could simply beat him because he was built for clay. And so when Nadal grew up, and when his era of kids grew up, they built academies and taught the next generation of players. Juan Carlos Ferrero went for world #1 to running the academy that raised Carlos Alcaraz. Nadal's got his own in Mallorca, and Spain doesn't really discover champions, but it grows them like crop. Take England as well. We have so many football academies, and they produce some of the world's best footballing talent. Now let me go into part 2 of this machine really quick. Italy wrote the check, because if Spain is the machine's oldest part, Italy is its newest. And honestly, it's kind of the scariest in my opinion. Get your head around these numbers really quick. Italian tennis's revenue in 2003 was around £17 million, but by 2023, it was nearly £170 million. That's a 900% increase. The federation now counts around 1.2 million registered members and around triple of what it had in 2020. That's across more than 4,000 clubs in Italy alone. And crucially, they spent it on the boring stuff. Italy hosted 19 challenger events in just one single year. That's the tour below the ATP, which means a young Italian can climb the entire professional ladder without even leading the country. The ATP finals got moved to Turin, and the 2025 edition alone generated an estimate of 600 million. And Italy had won back-to-back Davis Cups in 2023 and then in 2024 again. So when you do watch Yannick Sinner and think he's a generational miracle, don't, because he's not. He's the product line working exactly as it's designed. And even Cobolli, standing across the net from Zverev in that Paris final, is the same exact machine Sinner had been a part of. Now let's go into part 3 of this machine, because the France one is a weird one, and I want to be honest about it. The French Federation had 1.2 million licensed players across 7,700 clubs, one of the biggest organized tennis populations on the entire planet, and yet no Frenchman has won a Grand Slam since Yannick Noah in 1983. 43 years. On paper, that looks like the entire system, the entire machine is completely failing. But to me, and to what I've seen, and to the data I've pulled, it's the complete opposite, because all that French depth doesn't disappear. It becomes the opposition. Every European junior spends their teens getting battle tested against wave after wave of well-coached French players week in, week out. France might not build a champion, but France builds the gauntlet the champion has to survive. And then we've got part 4, Eastern Europe. That includes Serbia, Croatia, Czechia. They're smaller economies with thinner funding, and somehow a permanent supply of top tenors in the ATP rankings are being produced. However, what they lack in Italy's sized budgets, they make up for the ferocity in competitive junior systems, and players for whom tennis is simply a way out, but not a hobby. They need tennis to survive, but they don't need tennis as a career. Djokovic didn't come off this production line as we've been talking about with Sinner or Alcaraz. He came out of a war, and that hunger he was raised from was a resource to him which Europe has never had a source of. And now here's the part that truly matters. What wins 87 of 88 slams is that they're all 2 hours apart. A 14-year-old in Barcelona can reach dozens of international junior tournaments by car or on a budget flight. Spanish play grinders, French club players, Italian challenger kids, Serbian fighters, all colliding with each other every other weekend. And this is from the age of 10 or above. You have to forget about the machine as being one country or one system or just one thing in general. How I actually view it, and how I think you should view it, is that it's an ecosystem of tennis machines. So imagine every European country all combined into this one larger entity. And here's the thing about this ecosystem. When the players lose, when the individual player loses, or when their team loses, the system doesn't, because it always will have a supply of players. Okay, so before we get sidetracked, let's talk about the countries that lost the map. Since we've already talked about the system that produces the greatest players, let's talk about what happened to the lost countries. In September of 2003, in the Arthur Ashe Stadium, Roddick's ace flies past Ferrero. He falls to his knees, and American tennis celebrates like it's a routine. 4 years earlier, they'd won 3 majors in a single season. This was the natural order in many tennis players' eyes. So now the drought is approaching 3 times longer than the worst one in American history. The previous record was 30 slams without a champion. This was back in 1955 to 1963. Roddick's wait is now closing in on 90 slams without an American winner. And here's what makes it genuinely strange. It's not a talent shortage, because Taylor Fritz reached the 2024 US Open final, who was the first American man in a major final for 15 years. Then he ran into Sinner, and we already know what happened in that final. Coco Gauff and Madison Keys both won slams within a single year. They're the same routines, but one draw produces champions, but the other one hasn't done so in 2 decades. So if it's not really talent, what is it? I found 3 structural things that make these 2 sides different. The first one is the surface. Lots of American kids grow up on hard courts, where their pace gets rewarded and shortcuts do exist. However, Spanish players grew up on clay, where the surface can confiscate any shortcut at all. And by the time those juniors meet at 19, one of them has effectively played years more tennis per match. The second is the pathway. America's best young athletes get hoovered up by the NFL or NBA money. And for those who stay in tennis, the classic route runs through college, which is a brilliant system for education, but a slow one for champions. And so while a European kid at the same age is already grinding challenges, the other is stuck in college. And so remember Italy hosting 19 of them at home? That's the ladder which American teenagers just don't have available at their front door. And the third is the cost and geography of the entire system. In Europe, development runs through subsidized federation clubs, and tournaments are a car ride away. But in America, it's all private coaching and economy flights. Everyone has the same dream, but everyone has a wildly different price tag to that same dream. And the USTA, they built a $63 million national campus in Florida with 100 courts to try and fix it. They're essentially betting they can pour concrete faster than Europe's 50-year head start. And I guess we'll see. Personally, I don't think this will work, but leave your opinion down in the comments below and tell me what you think. And what about the other countries that fell behind? Australia still has elite coaching, but a small population and a huge travel distance between countries makes it insanely difficult for juniors. South America has never stopped really making talent. Del Potro is the literal proof, but what it lacks is money and infrastructure. This is why every prospect eventually has to emigrate to develop. Asia has the populations. It's got an incredible amount of people and talent, but it's building in decades what Europe had already compounded over half a century. And so no, Europe didn't simply speed up. Everyone else, each in their own way, slowed down, and both things happened at once. Okay, so after that, let's get to the hopeful bit, because there are some cracks in it, or at least things that I think appear like cracks. We've got Fonseca, Brazilian, he's 19 years old, and he's the most exciting South American prospect since Cretin. He's already got 2 tour titles, and this June at Roland Garros, he beat Novak Djokovic. Then he made his first Grand Slam quarterfinal. And for 1 week, it generally looked like, to me at least, that the wall was coming down. But then he lost to Jakub Mensik, who was a Czech teenager. So maybe the pattern still exists. And I need you to appreciate how brutal that is though, because the most promising non-European in 15 years finally breaks through. And standing on the other side of that breakthrough is another product of the same machine that produced everyone. He was younger than most of the players he'd just beaten. So what about the Americans? Because they're closer than they've been in my lifetime. Fritz is there, Ben Shelton is there, Francis Tiafoe is there, and we've also got Lerner Tien coming in. And again, let me know what you think of this in the comments. Tell me if you think America is going to be the biggest Grand Slam winner producer outside of you. But the honest thing is, the system has compounded so much that it's just super hard for other countries to maintain or even bring up their standards to the same level as Europe's. If you made it this far in the video, I really do appreciate you. I make investigative tennis videos like this because I think the sport's real stories live behind the scoreline. And if you want more of that, the single most useful thing you can do is like this video and subscribe to my channel. And so 2 things before you go. The first one is about the men's game, because the women's game is a completely different planet. This year's Australian Open women's champion was Elena Rybakina, who was representing Kazakhstan. Gauff and Keys are winning for America, but there's no European wall in the women's draw. And why the machine only dominates one side of the sport is honestly beyond me. From all the research I've done for this video, I couldn't get a single answer. For the second one, and this is the one that confused me even more, if you remember the global era of the 90s and the 2000s, before this entire European takeover, Murat Safin was a Russian superstar, the guy who beat Sampras in a US Open final. He was sent to Spain as a kid to learn the game on clay. The machine was already running, but nobody had noticed it yet. And if you want to see where the story goes next, I made a whole video on Saudi Arabia's plan to buy its way into tennis. And that's the next system trying to get built. And it's right here. And if you want to know what Europe's dominance looks like from 10 feet away, my film on what I saw at Wimbledon this year is right here.